Hello, this is Tom Lorentzen. Welcome to Interesting People. Interesting People is produced here at Chabot College in Hayward, California, under the auspices of the Chabot Los Positas Community College District. The name of the program is Interesting People because it's based upon the premise that there are interesting people everywhere, in every town, every family, every community. You don't have to be famous or known to be interesting. And as we all know, we all have interesting experiences and stories. This program today is going to be about an interesting town and with interesting people. And the town is actually the town of Castro Valley, California, which is the town where I live and my two guests live as well. And as a side, I'm a president of the Hayward Area Historical Society and also on the board of the Castro Valley History Museum, and a former national board member of the Institute of Museum and Library Services. With that said, I have a strong interest in not only history, but the people and places where history is made, whether it's small, medium, or large. And history is made everywhere. In today's program, we are going to visit with two people and talk about an interesting town, which I mentioned. It is the town of Castro Valley, which is located on the east side of the San Francisco Bay Area. It is a town where my guests also live. It was once a rural town that was largely focused on farming and ranching. And at one time was a real chicken capital here in California, second only to Petaluma in terms of the number of chickens who resided there and the number of eggs that were produced. With the passage of time, Castro Valley turned into a suburban town. And it's also one of the largest unincorporated towns in California. As a writer, I often refer to Castro Valley as a hamlet. It's not a city, and it is a town, but I call it a hamlet. My two guests today have lived virtually most all of their lives in Castro Valley and the neighboring town of Hayward and close by. They are respected community leaders and throughout their lives in Castro Valley and the East Bay. And what's really fascinating about them is they are both young at heart and positive in spirit, and they are both amazing young people at the age of 95 each. They first met in high school at Hayward High School, the old Hayward High School, which was one of the most beautiful high schools in the country. Between the two of them, we're going to cover almost 100 years in a way in terms of their experiences in the town of Castro Valley and the East Bay and the Bay Area and their personal memories. And with that, I welcome my guest to the show. On my left here is Lucille Lorge. Welcome to the show, Lucille. Glad you're here. And to my right is Al Bronzini, who's been on this show before.
A pleasure.
So welcome to Interesting People. Lucille, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Tell our viewers here, and myself and Al, a little bit about your family history, and I believe you came from a family of German heritage. You came to this. Your family came to this region, I think, in the late 19th century. Is this all correct?
Yes, it is.
Well, tell us a little bit about your family history.
Okay, my family came from Denswick, Germany, in about 1875. My great-grandfather, looking for a better life, came, of course, landed in San Francisco first with his wife and children. He was looking for an area that was a better suit for him and his family. So he traveled from San Francisco to Castro Valley. Eventually, he realized Castro Valley really needed a better thoroughfare from Livermore area into the Bay Area because they were transporting so much livestock. People needed a thoroughfare to go through. So he kind of settled on the area of Castro Valley. Actually, the area he really liked was between Livermore Valley, and Robert's Landing. He eventually bought a few acres in Castro Valley between Redwood Road and Grove Way, where Trader Joe's now and Presbyterian Church now are situated. He moved his family there and opened what they called a way station. He called it Henry Tomford's Exchange. We have a photograph here showing the old exchange. He put a big water trough in front of the building, knowing people would be driving their herds of cattle, sheep, whatever, through that area. And by they got to that place, they would be thirsty. So, in his little building, he put a small bar area where they could buy a schooner of beer for 5 cents, and his German wife, Marie, would then serve bratwurst or some German dish. In the meantime, his water trough in front would be busy watering the cattle, horses, sheep, whatever he was bringing through. He was very popular, not only for that, but he displayed a 3-headed chicken in a jar of formaldehyde inside the building, which was talked about from several people. So he was one of the very first people to own a business in Castro Valley. And as I said, Trader Joe's and the Presbyterian Church are now situated on that spot. He had 5 children. His son, George, was my grandfather. He spent many years working at the Apperson Ranch in Pleasanton. He raised his 5 children because his wife had passed away. And Apperson Ranch, of course, if you know the story of Phoebe Apperson Hearst, that was that story too. My father was born in Sonoma and lived there and worked for many years. My mother then was born and raised in San Francisco. She had to leave because her house was burned down during the 1906 earthquake. And so they started the backfire at her house. Her father's business, which was a jewelry store, was on Market Street, and of course that was destroyed also. So they took their few belongings, caught a ferry, and went to Oakland, where they had relatives. My mother said she, of course, brought her Irish setter dog with her. Halfway across the bay, the dog jumped in the water. She said the dog got to the shore in Oakland before the ferry did. But she and my father then met, were married, lived in Hayward on Grove Way. The old house is still located there. My sister and I were born in that house. That's more or less my background.
And we have a photograph here, which we'll put on the screen. This is the exchange. That's
right.
Was in essence the first business then in
Right.
Castro Valley.
The first business.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then this is the bar or
a bar. The bar was similar to that look in the old exchange.
And we'll put this up on the screen so it can be seen a little bit better. And this was the exchange, the first business, actually, in the Castro Valley
Castro
area.
Valley,
And this was about what year would this have been, Lucille?
1880.
1880, wow.
Right.
And so you are a walking history yourself with your
Right.
family's history.
That's how I became so interested in Castro Valley's history.
Yeah.
Was when I discovered my great-grandfather had that building.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then Al Bronzoni here. Al, you're next to me here.
Bronzini.
Bronzini. Okay, I got to get it right. My apology. And you were a guest here on the show before, and we
Yes.
talked about the experience, particularly of the Italians in internment camps after Pearl Harbor. But tell us a little bit about how your family came here from Italy, well, close to 100 years ago. Give us some of that background, Al.
It was 1923 that my father, after the World War I, he was discharged from the military in Italy, and he was very much in love with a young woman, but they could not be married because there was no economy in Italy. All you could do, they were farmers, they had small farms and they grew crops, and so the only opportunity that he saw there might be some possibility was to go to America, and he had a brother already here in America that sponsored him, and he promised the young lady, my mother-to-be, that if he were successful in America, he would return and they could be married. So he did just that. In July of 1923, he journeyed to America and connected with his brother and began introducing him to other people. And my father did quite well in America, as I've covered this before in a previous interview, that he was fortunate enough to meet the Mike Booty and his cohorts that were working in Crow Canyon, part of Castro Valley, and they were making moonshine. They were making brandy. So my father went to work for Mike Booty, and in fact did quite well. As a matter of fact, in a period of 5 years, he saved up a substantial amount of money. The number that's always been referred to in my memory is $9,000. So he wrote to his girlfriend, they were not yet engaged even, that if she were still of the same feeling as before he left, then he was prepared to return to Italy and they could be married. So he did in fact return to Italy in 1928 after having worked for 5 years here in America, and they were married in the village where they grew up.
Beautiful day.
And so
Remember this moment?
the plan was to stay in Italy for probably a few years because he was financially quite solvent at that time, but he knew enough about what was going on with the fascist movement, and they had already began the youth movement in Germany, and he knew that it would be coming to Italy because in the military he was a chauffeur for high-ranking officers, and he heard a lot of conversations about what was coming up. So he discussed with my mom, and it was difficult for them because my mother-to-be still had her mother and father there, a brother and 2 sisters, and my dad had his mother and a brother and 2 sisters. But the logical and sensible thing to do was to return to America, where if they were to be raising a family, they would be free from the dictatorships that were the fascist movement that was moving in very strongly at that time. So they came to America, and my father started selling produce and vegetables and fruits off of the back of a Model T Ford truck. From that, he and two partners purchased a building in the Fruitvale district of East Oakland, and life was good. I can remember as a child, we were a happy, very, very happy family. And so things were well. My dad bought a home, and he had a water heater installed. We didn't have hot water before, except one that went to the bathroom. I think there was a coil that sent hot water to the bathroom. A new stove, a new 1939 Pontiac automobile. Life could not have been better. They had applied for their citizenship papers, but due to the language barrier and some apathy, and besides the fact that life was good in America, there was no animosity between America and Italy. There's always been a very good relationship. So presumably they thought, well, what's the hurry? Well, the hurry came after the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. My mother and father were not yet naturalized American citizens. So they were listed as enemy aliens. They had to be put on restrictions and certain confinements. They were not interned. The Japanese people were interned. They were gone. They were disappeared. I had two Japanese children in my sixth grade elementary school class, and one day they were just gone. The German kids, I don't remember there being many, but they were affected the same way. So, having been listed as enemy aliens of this country, which they adored, put them in a bad situation, because my father received notice from the government. It was an executive order by President Roosevelt. It was Executive Order 9066 that had declared that section of Oakland where we lived and where my father had his business as a military sensitive zone. Well, that was the beginning of a lot of things that did not go down well. We lived in a community called Melrose. There were other communities like it, but we lived in Melrose. It was an enclave. It was, everybody spoke Italian. All the families that immigrated at or about the same time pretty much lived there. It may have been a mile in each direction. And my father had to close his market, and that was a means of income for the family. My mom became very ill. As a matter of fact, just prior to that, the policemen came to our home and they searched the house looking for nefarious things, guns, cameras. We had none. My dad had nothing like that. But as they were searching the house, they noticed the big Philco console radio which was a beautiful thing. Not too many families had them at that time, but Dad had done well and we were living well. And so they had this beautiful radio and the police took it. They picked it up. It was a big console radio. They picked it up and hauled it out the front door of the house. And I remember my mother screaming and crying and hollering at the police. She was actually pulling on the policeman's arm and his sleeve of his uniform, pleading with him not to take the radio, but the radio went. After that, they had to report to the library every Friday evening and have their little pink enemy alien booklet stamped. And that was quite demeaning for people who were honest and hardworking and raising a family, doing all the right things. But the big mistake was that they did not become American citizens prior to the war. My mom, due to the trauma of all of these events, had a mental collapse and had to be committed to a hospital in Livermore, which was for people who had mental problems. The gossip in the neighborhood was that Clara had been taken to a hospital for crazy people. That was a terrible stigma. When the word got out that this was happening, it was just the worst of times, absolutely the worst of times. So after a few months in the hospital, we went to visit her, and she was not the same mother that I knew and loved. Her hair was all disheveled, and the rosy cheeks were gone, her eyes were sunken. She was like comatose. I don't even know that she recognized us. And she was sitting on the edge of her bed and in a position like this. And my father went around the back and they had her bound in a straitjacket. And the reason for that was that they couldn't control her rage when they were giving her the injections to calm her down. And the reason for her rage was the fact that she was not accepting what was going on. She was not an educated woman as far as the government shouldn't be doing this or that, but she was intelligent and she wasn't accepting it. So my dad went into a rage with one of the doctors. I remember that because I was nearly 13 years old at the time, so I remember very clearly. And we took her home.
Now we're going to pause for a second here because we have to insert a public service announcement here, and then we'll come back to this. So we'll just take a brief break here and come back in just in a minute or two then. Okay.
We all deserve a place to call home. That's an American dream.
Welcome back to Interesting People. My name's again Tom Lorentzen. This is the program Interesting People, done under the auspices of the Chabot Los Positas Community College District in Hayward, California. My guests are Lucille Lorge and Al Bronzini. Now, Al's going to just wrap up here with the story he was telling us about his mother and then how he ended up then coming to the town of Castro Valley. where he meets Lucille. So please go back ahead again, Al.
Do I get the signal?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, after we brought Mom home, it wasn't very long that my father had had enough of the heckling and the name calling without going through them all. That was quite humiliating. So he said that we have had enough of that. We didn't come to this country to be treated this way. We've done nothing wrong. We're going to move to Castro Valley. And he was familiar with Castro Valley because he had been there in the 1920s from 23 to 28, where he was making the moonshine with Mike Booty. And so we bought a home in Castro Valley. And fortunately, the street that we moved on to, which incidentally, I still live on that same piece of property, there were 7 Italian families. My mother began to smile again. The healing process had begun. We had chickens and a pig and a horse, and life was becoming good. So it was time for me to begin going to school. So in Oakland, the school that I ended up attending was Hamilton Junior High School, which was a junior high that went to the 8th grade. Well, I was going to enroll in Hayward Union High School, the old Union High School. I think there's a picture around here somewhere. It was a magnificent school. And I went on my bicycle and enrolled on one morning. And I really thought I was in the wrong town because it was such a beautiful school. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was some kind of a government building. It was so gorgeous. But anyway, that's where I first met Lucille and her friends. And she introduced me to some other folks. And when I started at Hayward High, I entered I was under a severe case of low self-esteem, because coming from that neighborhood in Oakland where we were somewhat confined, and the restrictions and requirements that we had to live under did not allow me to express myself. So my father used to say, "Oh, always, the kids call you names, don't fight, don't argue. We're in this country as guests, and so we don't want to set a bad reputation." But Hayward was different. Castro Valley was different. Everybody was so friendly, and it didn't matter if you were Italian or Portuguese or Chinese or anything else. And I was just overwhelmed with this mass doses of kindness and acceptance that I started to grow out of my shell that I was in. I became a member of the Future Farmers of America. I loved the auto shop. I liked music appreciation. Lucille and I had classes together in music appreciation and
A cappella.
A cappella. Life was good. Life was really good.
And I'm going to show here this is a photograph of the Hayward High School, which no longer exists in this format. It was torn down in the early 60s.
1964.
64, yeah.
They tore it down.
And then a new high school was built. But this high school was an architectural gem. It was used in some motion pictures, and it also was an architectural gem for the East Bay. it was such an elegant place to go. So you can imagine what Al experienced when he walked into a place like this the first day of school,
Right.
and then one of the first persons you meet is Lucille. So Lucille, you're going to this school. What was it like for you then, back then?
It was said to be the most beautiful school in California at that time. It was a pleasure to go there. I always felt safe, warm, loved there. The teachers were great. Our friends were wonderful, weren't they, Al? We had so many good friends. And of course, Al tried to date me, too. Should I tell those stories?
Did you do any good, Al?
Well, let me say this. Lucille, you were the most popular girl in the entire high school.
And I've got a picture to verify that.
Yeah,
I got a couple pictures there.
And I, in order to play it safe, I would always date
There's
you.
Al.
I would always ask you for a movie date 6 months in advance
Yeah,
to be sure that I didn't miss out.
right.
Well, there was one particular event
Tell it.
that took place,
You can tell it.
and it was for the senior prom. And I said, I am going to outsmart the other 100 guys in my class. And I asked Lucille for a date to the senior prom in plenty of time. And I felt, and it's fortunately that I didn't tell anybody. I kept it all to myself. I didn't go around tooting my horn. Well, what happened before the senior prom, some other guy came along, probably taller, more handsome, had more money, whatever. And she said, I have to go with so-and-so because he invited me to his senior prom, so it's only just that I invite him to mine.
He just told me this the other day.
I
and
kept this to myself.
I am so ashamed of myself.
I kept
for
this to
doing
myself for
something
80 years.
That's okay.
horrible.
You're 95 now.
Right. He finally forgave me, I think.
But we remain friends.
Always.
We
Always.
remain
You know,
friends.
I just want to show here, I've got a picture of Al, 1948, when graduating from high school with
Graduated.
curly hair. I don't know
Right.
what happened to it, Al. And here's Lucille, without doubt the most beautiful girl in the high school class, and still a beautiful lady there. So, to me, what I find so interesting about the two of you is you're still vibrant people at 95, you're still friends, and here, well, in Castro Valley there in particular, where you live and where I live, you came together and with a new possibility, like you said, things weren't held against you because you were Italian, and people fit in. And Lucille, I know you
Well,
said hello to him the first day he walked into the school.
yes. Yeah.
And
I walked up that majestic stair in the front of the school, and Lucille and 3 or 4 other girls were talking in the hallway.
Of course.
I asked, I said, can someone tell me where the office is? And somebody pointed over there, and so I went, and that was the beginning. And
Right.
I cannot describe the what it's like to be finally feeling accepted. And it didn't, like I've mentioned here a few moments ago, there were Portuguese children, there were Italian kids, there were German kids, but English, but we never referred to that. Nobody
No.
knew, nobody cared. It didn't matter.
I don't think we knew the difference.
I didn't know you had German
between-
heritage until yesterday.
I know.
but I'd like to go in, because Al, you and your family came to Castro Valley and you left Oakland in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor and the entrance into World War II. You were already in the area there.
Right.
What's your memory of when you first heard of because Pearl Harbor changed everything as 9/11 later changed
Yeah.
it. Tell us, the audience here, what your
Well-
recollection is. When did you first learn about Pearl Harbor, and where were you?
I was 11 when the war broke out. I remember sitting in the old Hayward Theater, and on the screen came this big blob of war just broke out. Pearl Harbor has been bombed.
Pearl Harbor was just attacked by Japan. Details to follow as they come in.
Well, of course, Pearl Harbor, I wasn't even sure where that was, but everybody was sighing, and I knew it was something bad. So, of course, as soon as I got home, my parents clued me in on what really had happened. My dad was already putting up black curtains on the windows and trying to prepare for the inevitable. Right.
Now, I described Castro Valley and the area there back at that time, 1941, 42, as still a rural town becoming suburban. And your family was in the chicken
Well,
business?
I married Ray Lorge, who his father and mother had just gotten married, moved from Wisconsin to Castro Valley because they had heard that this was a really growing community and that poultry was the main reason so many people were moving there and starting hatcheries. So my husband's family did start a California State Hatchery, it was called. And after I graduated from high school, I worked for 5 years for the San Lorenzo School District. So many people were moving into California in the 1950s that all of our towns were increasing in size and our schools were really growing. So we started the hatchery at that time. So from 1900 to the 1950s, Castro Valley was the second largest egg producing place in the world. Petaluma, of course, was first. So I quit work because my husband needed me at the hatchery. So I learned how to do everything that involved hatching baby chicks and ducks and geese and pheasants and quail, everything that came out of an egg we were hatching. Was interesting, loved animals, loved the rural life. So it was a good choice, good place for me. I had fantastic in-laws that I was very close to.
Now, Lucille, it's my understanding or recollection you contributed to causing a controversy about little chicks becoming purple and pink and blue or whatever. Tell
Right.
the audience, what did you do or what happened
I
there?
think we've got a picture.
Well, we might. I'll have to find it here.
Yeah.
We'll insert it later
Well,
if we can find it.
Okay, my mother-in-law and I decided, well, when you hatch baby chicks, there's a big market for the pullets. Of course, the layers. And the white leghorn chicken was most popular because they laid a white egg. And people thought the white egg was better than the brown egg, which it is not. But that's what people even buy now are the white eggs. So after the baby chicks were hatched, we had a sexer come in to sex the day-old chicks. Actually, I wanted to go to school to learn how to do that because there was a program called What's My Line? And at that time I thought that would be so much fun to go on to that. They'd never guess I was a chick sexer. So, but anyway, the poultries were fine. We could get rid of those. But we were left with the cockerels, which was the male chick. So at Easter time, my mother-in-law and I thought, why can't we dye those along with the Easter eggs we were dyeing? So we tried it. We took their feet, their beak, and just dipped them through the warm dye, put them right back in the incubator. They were beautiful. They were pink and green and purple. We sold them for 25 cents a baby chick. We thought we were rich. But in order to make the business larger, we decided to go to Swan's Market in Oakland and make our spiel. So off we went. He was very nice, the manager. Sat there listening to our whole story. Then he said to us, I am the president of the SPCA, and I don't think you're going to be doing this any longer. That was the end of getting rich.
And I think you made national news at that time, too,
We
'cause it
did.
was such a controversial story. But
First people to do that.
Can I interject something?
go ahead, and then we're going to take a break here in a
All
second,
right.
but go ahead.
I would like to mention Lucille's mom and dad. They were people ahead of their time. Their home was open to kids coming and going all the time. And I thought to myself, this girl someday would be the type of girl that one would marry. I thought if I could marry a girl like Lucille, I'd be happy forever. Well, I was 16 years old and she was 16 years old, so I had to give that a lot of thought. But the thought that went to what triggered this thought was when you mentioned the ducks. Lucille's father was an avid duck hunter. And it seemed as though whenever I went to their house to visit, that he would take me in the backyard and show me his catch of the day. And he had shot 3 or 4 ducks that day. And he had these ducks hanging on the side of the shed, upside down from their, head down, with dry blood dripping that had dried in the hot sun, and this enormous shotgun which stood as tall as Mr. Tomford was. I had to give my thinking a little more consideration.
That's understandable.
would not have been a good suggestion.
But with that note, Alan, let's see, we're going to pause for a public service announcement again, and then we're going to come back to the program in a minute or so.
How you holding up? Nothing wrong with getting help.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Welcome back to Interesting People. My name's Tom Lorentzen, the host of this show, and my guest Lucille Lorge and Al Bronzini. Did I get this one right?
Yes, you did.
I got it right this time. My
Yes.
apology. So we're going to move into the topic of a town, Castro Valley, and as it's transitioning from rural to suburban, and the way the town was coming together, and these two individuals played important roles and their families in the town coming together. So Al, going back, when you graduate from high school, both of you do, in 1948,
Right.
and you start to become a businessman.
Well,
And so tell us about what Castro Valley, how
Yeah.
business fit in with the development of Castro Valley.
I had developed a passion for working on automobiles, and I did that in the farm mechanics shop. It was part of the Future Farmers of America, and that was my plan, to become a journeyman auto mechanic. But what happened was the shop where I was working in Hayward burnt to the ground, and I was out of a job. So my neighbor in Castro Valley said, "You need work?" And I said, "Yeah, I need work." So I went to work for a fella who owned a appliance store in East Oakland, and he was my neighbor there in Castro Valley. And so he says, "I'm going to make a salesman out of you." And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about selling." And he says, "I'll teach you." And so he working on me to develop me with sales techniques and so forth. Well, I didn't do badly, but I did not excel. And so they gave me the house calls to go to homes, people's homes. You take your catalog, you go out to people's homes and show them where your wares. So the very first one was one in the Lakeshore district of Oakland, Grand Lake district of Oakland. It was on Walla Vista Street. I presented myself to the lady. I rang her doorbell, and I had a nice suit on and shiny shoes, and I was ready to make my presentation. And she opened the door, took one look at me, and slammed the door shut. And I was stunned. I went back to the store, and the boss is laughing like a loon. He says, "Come here, Bronzini." He said, "Here's $5. Go buy yourself a hat." The lady was offended because I didn't present myself with the hat in hand. That was my beginning. But anyway, I continued that, and I became quite accomplished in the sales department. In 1952, I was Maytag champion. They sent me back to the Maytag factory in Newton, Iowa, and then I came back, and then I was promoted to sales manager. I was there for 10 years, and I was then hired by a gentleman who opened a big store in Hayward, furniture and appliances. And so I phoned all of my clients that I had from Oakland and Castro Valley, and the word got out that I was in business in Hayward, and later became general manager, and then general partner, and then probably 10 or 12 years later, I purchased the business, and I ended my entire professional life in the business world as a retail furniture and appliance dealer. I was in it at a great time because it was in it at a time when the automatic washing machine just came out. As a matter of fact, I sold your mom an automatic washing machine.
I hope it
Remember
was
that
good.
Maytag I sold her?
I love my new washer and dryer.
I rang doorbells in the neighborhoods of families that I knew, and it grew from there. And finally, in 1984, I retired from that business, and within 6 weeks, I got tired of being retired. It was totally boring being retired. As a matter of fact, even my age today, I'm still working because I enjoy it. I'm in the rental housing business today, and I love it.
And Al, there was in the 50s, there was Castro Valley, the town's developing. So you're in the business, but Castro Valley's coming together as still, as it is now, still an unincorporated town.
Yes.
There was the sanitation district, I think, was the first
Yeah.
governmental entity because sanitation is critical, of course, along roads. But tell us what your views are, as Castro Valley is developing, because then a school district was formed, which is still very
Right.
much the heart of Castro Valley.
Yeah.
And there was a man named A.B. Morris. I think you both
Yes.
knew him.
He was
Yeah.
Tell us
wonderful.
about A.B. Morris and how schools developed in Castro Valley, from your recollection.
Well, as you said, Castro Valley grew tremendously in the 1950s. We built our home off of Stanton Avenue. From my home, which is on a slight hill, I could look through the whole valley, see the hills in the background. They were bare, beautifully covered with green in the spring. Now, 72 years later, the hills are covered with homes and lights. Castro Valley is a bowl, looks like a bowl. So we are almost up to the rim of the bowl right now. But we have a great school district. It's so good that young families, first thing they're going to look at is how good are your schools when they're moving there with their young children. Ours rate very highly, which we are proud of. And of course, industry was coming in. We were full of restaurants. We still are full of restaurants.
And most of them are breakfast places, too, I think.
Most of them are.
The thing, if I may inject here, the thing that impresses me so much about Castro Valley, that even with the growth that we have had, is still family-oriented community.
It is.
If there's an event downtown, you see young families with their children.
Yes.
And that is what is the glue that has
Right.
held us
Right.
together, and we still retain that,
Yeah.
to use a term, small town feeling.
Yeah.
Well, we still do. We have that small town feeling.
We have the parades, not too
Right.
many towns. Thanks to our Rotary Club, we have lots of functions
Yeah.
going on.
We do, and I
down-
think you're right, Alan. And a friend of mine referenced a while back said, why don't we have better dinner places like some other towns in the Bay Area? And I made the comment, well, we go out for breakfast in Castro Valley.
Yeah.
And breakfast seems to be more of the social environment than a dinner place. And that goes back to your roots in the ranching
Right.
world, chickens, and
Right.
and you come into Castro Valley from Oakland, which was a city, but I think Castro Valley still has this unique flavor, and that's why. But the schools, it's still one of the better school districts in the Bay
It
Area.
is. Right.
I think it's fascinating that this unincorporated town had developed a good school system that's been maintained it all these
And
years.
lots of that is thanks to A.B. Morris. He was a great superintendent. And then Marvin Smith, that came after him, was equally as good.
And Arnold Anderson, who had the vision to build the village.
The shopping
That
center,
used to be a big, he was in real estate.
Yes.
He looked across at this big tomato field and thought, we need a focal point, a business focal point.
He lived on Jameson,
Yeah, so
and
he
he could
built
see that.
the Castro Valley Village,
Well, you-
1951.
And you were very much active during that period of time because when the Castro Village developed, the school district developed, Eden Hospital, we have a new Eden, the hospital developed, the
Yeah.
Eden District. So it's fascinating that Castro Valley matured and never left its roots, though.
Right.
And kept that family-oriented, rural
It
sense of self
always-
there.
It's
I
as
cannot
felt.
express the feeling of coming from a situation in Oakland that
Yeah.
we were in with all that was going on and coming to Castro Valley, and it was like breathing deep breaths of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
The acceptance, the people would come over to our home, and my mom was a great cook, and they would stay for dinner, and we developed we developed a community within a community. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful.
And it still
And
is.
it's still pretty much the same.
Much the same.
Yeah.
Probably the best known, or certainly one of the best known writers in California history is John Steinbeck, and he, Steinbeck country is all the Salinas, Monterey, Carmel area
Right.
down there, Moss Landing, and all about place. And he had said at different times that he was always about the Salinas Valley and that area. And it strikes me was he captured the period of time when Salinas and the area was developing, going from rural to more industrial with agriculture. That Castro Valley, we needed a John Steinbeck to capture Castro Valley as it was going from this rural town. Your family had the first business there.
Yeah.
And it's developed all these years. But as they were running short of time here, what I'd like to do is just sort of pick your brains a little bit here at the end briefly and say, looking out at the audience and talking to people, particularly young people, what lessons have you learned in your life that you feel is worth sharing as advice to young people if they'd like to listen? I think they would. Because
Well, as an old person, so many people say to me, how do you still enjoy life? What do you do? How do you keep busy? And Al and I both agree, you've got to stay active. You've got to keep your body active, mainly your mind active. Have goals still, things that you're looking forward to doing. In some cases, I know that's very difficult, but for me and for Al, it's been a lifesaver to be involved with people, with your community, know what's going on, and just hang in there.
And I'm going to add in something, then have Al make a comment, because both of you at 95, you're energetic, you're very alert, your memories are very good. And from my perception, as I've gotten to know you in recent years and everything, I think because you've had that outlook, you've had that, and Castro Valley was a place that enabled you to have a really good lives and hopefully many more good years. And Al, when you came to Castro Valley, you've been a part of it now for 70 years or more.
We came to Castro Valley in 1943.
Yeah. And you're a young guy. You're still vibrant.
Well, yeah. My perspective is, don't get too far behind the curve. Young people today are very smart. They know more about technology than I care to learn. We did not have the advantages that they have today. However, as a result of that, we were required to use what we had upstairs. And I still do today. If one of my children or grandchildren says or does something, I will like to know, how did you arrive at that? Oh, well, such and such told me that this was the thing. I said, okay, fine. Now I know. I like to know what's going on. I like knowledge. I like reading. If I hear a word that I have never heard before, I'll go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary on the laptop and find out what it means. I don't use it because I'm afraid I might put it in the wrong place, but now I know what it means. So you have to stay engaged. You have to stay on top of your game. If you get too far behind, and I know people who have say, I quit, I give it up, I'm done. No, I don't want to be done. And to correct Tom, thank you for the compliment. I am not 95, I'm 96.
Oh, okay. Well, I stand corrected then.
But I've been blessed. I've had a blessed life. I had good parents. I had a wonderful family. I am now a great grandfather of 3 boys. And it just doesn't get any better
No.
than this.
Life is
But
good.
you have to participate.
Yeah.
I loved my teachers. People say, you liked your teachers? I loved my teachers. They were wonderful. I cannot imagine of a teacher that we had in that high school that I did not like.
I know.
And
They
some
were
of them were
all
tough
great.
love,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Elizabeth Lee, she said, I was a senior ready for graduation. Albert, if I can't read your work, I'm going to flunk you. And if I flunk you, you will not graduate. Well, guess what? I started printing, and that was 80 years ago. I'm still printing.
Well, I think in wrapping up the show, because we're running short of time here, I'm going to sort of summarize what I think we've just had an opportunity to listen to, learn here from Lucille Lorge and Al Bronzini, and that is a life well led and many more years to come, with two individuals that have remained vibrant, curious, interested, dedicated to their family, their town, and there's a lot of beneficiaries in Castro Valley and the area because of what the two of you have done and your families. And I'm one of those beneficiaries. I'm younger, I'm 80. So, but I know I've been a beneficiary of what the two of you have done and your family's done. And I think for the people viewing this program too, as Al said, the teachers too, how key the teachers are. Your daughter has been an outstanding teacher.
Right.
And I think there's lessons to be learned in this conversation tonight with Lucille and Al. So we'll wrap it up here, and I want to thank you very much for being on the show, Lucille.
Thank you, Tom.
Participating with us, and Al.
Thank you for the invitation.
For being on here and
You bet.
participating.
Thank
and
you.
thank you all the viewers out there, and we wish you all well.